Hi, everybody. Welcome to the FTS in the Zoom podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lawrence Yang, family doctor in Surrey. And we have with us Dr. Edward Fang. And Edward, you used to be a pharmacist, right?
I did, yes.
Yeah. And I want to thank you for joining me here, because it's not often that, people who are residents like yourself, I think, come on to podcasts about health systems improvement. You guys are usually so busy doing your rotations and everything. Give us a little bit of where are you now in your training, Edward? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, yeah, for sure. So I trained pharmacy and my undergrad in medicine in the University of British Columbia. I am an R1 6 months in the UBC's Surrey Family Medicine program. My home clinic is White Rock Medical Associates in White Rock. And like you said, I think it's important to have residents part of the conversation, as we're essentially inheriting the landscape of family medicine, and we're the ones that are probably most affected in the decades to come in our career.
Absolutely. You guys really are, like, literally, you guys are the future. You guys are inheriting everything that we're doing right now. And historically, we have not done a great job of preparing many of our trainees for many of the aspects to come. For myself, a lot of those challenges were around maybe the business side of family medicine. You and I are both involved in some forums where we discuss challenges within family medicine. I'm going to turn off my ringer. Sorry about that. And
no worries.
Yeah, and on those forums, we're not going to reveal exactly which forum because they are private forums, but there are some kind of upsetting things that you've seen on some of these forums. What is the top one? What is the thing that really kind of irritates you or disheartens you the most from these forums where we chat about primary care?
I think it's the fact that a lot of family doctors who, us as junior residents or even senior residents, are, like in any industry, you're trying to find people to role model after and people to kind of, to hope that they'll take you under their wing, show you the ropes, and kind of, navigate you through like a very challenging yet rewarding career. In these private forums, you have very seasoned, very respectable family medicine physicians who are in very high level influential positions, who have not a lot of good things to say about family medicine. And when they do, it's very cookie cutter marketing sort of statements, such as, oh, family medicine is it's very important, whatnot. But if you think about when they go into the details of the good versus bad, the bad side has a lot more detail and a lot more cynicism, and it affects how people treat us as family medicine doctors and as well residents. For example, if I ever tell, like, there's a lot of condescension from specialists and from other family medicine doctors who have subspecialized within family medicine. Like, even recently, I was taught by very capable family medicine doctors who went on to do their CFP-CEM +1s and emerge, and they could not stop saying how it was the best move of their life and how primary care was practically their life's anathema and they'll never do it again. So I get that there are frustrations in every industry. It's simply very disparaging and frustrating to hear not a balanced rhetoric, like you hear like in these forums. It's simply like a very pessimistic view, and it really drowns out any voice for real change or real reform that especially a younger voice, I'm trying to say, hey, is there anything else we can do? And it's met with, you don't understand, you're new, and it's hopeless. And I think that is a very, this is that's not a compassionate response. It's not an empathetic response. It's simply it's a very dismissive tone overall.
Yeah, I thank you for explaining that. I'm getting the understanding now, because I've been a family physician in British Columbia for 11 years now, and when I see those responses, how I interpret them is, you know, this forum is for venting, a little bit of venting. So people are letting off their emotion. They are giving you a biased narrative of their experience, and sometimes their hope is for validation, and sometimes their hope is for actual ideas and solutions. But often it's for validation of suffering, because where else does a family physician go to find validation for suffering? There's no doctor's lounge, really. There are divisions of family practice, but those meetings are usually framed to actually suppress whining and suppress venting and go towards solutions. So what you're looking for is actually probably happening on Zoom meetings with other physicians, attending physicians, and occasionally residents will drop into those meetings. But I hear you that you join this community hoping to get support and hoping to offer actually really good, innovative ideas from your unique perspective, yourself having been recently in training, also experience in the pharmacy field, and also just being yourself a really alert, learned person who has access to the internet, really grew up in the internet age, to be able to offer ideas to some of us who have maybe less exposure to some of the innovation that's happening in other industries. And you're trying to offer solutions, but you're getting shot down or maybe even disrespected. Do I have that right?
Yes, Lord. Yes.
Yeah. Gosh, I can't imagine how frustrating that is. You actually told me that maybe some of your colleagues are actually exiting these forums because of it's almost like a consistently every post is about being defeated. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the same thing. And it's like I completely get venting, and you do need an outlet. But however, when it's the same thing over and over again, and especially it's the same people over and over again, and other voices get drowned out, and their experiences seem to have this hierarchy, or counterpoints, aren't being highlighted. It's sort of, well, it's really, just a kind of a soapbox for a very narrow view, and it certainly doesn't foster a sense of community. In fact, it just becomes again, like a very small group of individuals with very loud opinions who understandably do not represent everybody, but it does end up, it makes people afraid to speak up. It's no different than, if I can make a very crude analogy of, if you were to go to, say, an anti-vax forum, and you try to speak up, you just get shot down and saying, like, you don't understand, it's blah blah blah, and it's sort of like, well, I'm not going to speak up a second time, and there's really no point for me to be in this group if it doesn't benefit me and puts a damper on my day when I see those comments.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a little bit more of your perspective of how frustrating that can be, because sometimes these forums they're almost offered to us with the perception of, this is about improvement, this is about system improvement or system change, and then here you are offering ideas for improvement and change, and people are like dismissing you, saying, like, you don't know what you're talking about, just because you're still in training, but you actually have a ton of skills and ideas and experience from other places that other people don't recognize. Like, to them, you're just a you're just a little icon, and who knows who you are, right?
Yeah. And honestly, I still stay in the groups because it's sort of because whether I like it or not, I will have to work and be led by these people in the field, and seeing how they think and seeing, you know, what drives them, what makes them tick, what their pressure points are, is very important to me. And but it also shows how and it's sort of there there's sort of where the problems lie, in the sense that, you know, if they can't fix it, no one else possibly can. And I'm, you know, I'm trying to learn same way as I do as a resident. And I ask, like, why is my idea, or why is my point not valid? And I'm open to the idea, because if they said something like, oh, you don't know, like, you know, previously MSP paid this much, or taxes are like this, or, you know, like they're historically they withhold like 20% of payments because of, I don't know, like quality improvement or whatever, then I'd be like, oh, thank you for that bit of information. I learned something, and then I can go on and refine my plan. But when it's simply just emotional dismissal, saying that, oh, as a resident, you pretty much don't have a voice, like they don't know who I am, what I can bring to the table, or even like want to honestly, they don't want to invest in the later generation. They simultaneously love to, you know, champion how important family medicine is, and how like important primary care is, and how the new models are the future. But here I am as a junior resident, and they won't let me speak up. And not only will they not let me speak up, they won't invest into making me a better doctor. And yes, it's not like they're not formally involved in my education, and they're not, you know, part of the undergraduate training, but I am essentially a peer. And they always talk about like raising everybody up, and I don't see any of that behind private doors in this uncensored forum, where I'm, you know, I ask for advice and I basically get nothing, unless I join in on the bandwagoning and start to slam specialists and slam allied health and slam the government and just slam how, you know, like just everything. And well, that's not really a professional community.
You know, what you're saying is really resonating with me. And I'm hearing two things. One of them is that this forum is not providing any mentorship that seems to be compassionate or supportive.
Mhm.
And when we describe a culture of work, any type of work, you want a culture that's compassionate and supportive so that you can enjoy your daily life. And when you see what's happening on this forum, you're like, holy crap, did I make the right decision? Am I going into the right field? That's the first thing that comes to mind. Is that what's
Yeah.
really going on in your head?
I know I went into the right field. I am, and people think and I've been told repeatedly by both specialists, family doctors, like my co-residents, my peers, med school, that I was absolutely out of my mind for being a family doctor. And they repeat the rhetoric that other family doctors say what is bad about family medicine: the documentation, the lack of pay relative to everybody else, the medical legal fiascos, and how like every patient is undifferentiated, and but how you're still not respected and taken seriously. And, you know, all this zigzag. I am proud to be a family physician. I am not proud of my community. I am not proud of my community. And I really wish that as a trainee, I expected the quality of those senior to me to be better, to have a higher standard, so I could follow them. So I could be like, hey, if they say, you know, this is how I like balance my work, my life, you know, how do I survive in this pandemic, in a broken healthcare system? This is what I can do for you. Not, oh my God, young man, don't do it. And I'm like, well, I'm here, I've matched. I mean, I'm not a medical student. I'm a resident with, and I earned the MD after my name. I think that now as a colleague, I think I want to hear a different rhetoric, right? Like, as someone who is like, I do not know how to express my interest in family medicine more. And it just becomes like this default of, oh, you're in family medicine because maybe you were in the situation where, and this is a very cruel kind of observation, but there are a lot of people in family medicine who never wanted to be in family medicine in whichever generation. People match to family medicine because, they didn't want, they couldn't get into other specialties, or they picked it because, it was 2 years instead of 5 or 6. They picked it because, it seemed easy, right? You have a lot of people who are, by the virtue of numbers, is that, there are orthopedic surgeons who trained and said, man, I don't want to do this. And that would exist true for family as well. And they go, man, I really didn't want to do this. I am not one of them, but it takes a certain mental strength to kind of stand tall and proud to be a family medicine in your own field. And a lot of co-residents don't like, their mental strength is just eroded by the constant criticism, and they're looking for a way out. We're 6 months in, and half my residents are like, express some regret about, man, did I pick the right thing? Or even, was I even suited for medicine? And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to have a mentor come in and say, hey, it's not so bad. Here's what I did and whatnot. But it's not common. It's not readily available. And the people and the family doctors who are, right in our program, fail to inspire the residents, irrespective of their medical skill.
Yeah, that I heard you say that it doesn't matter what the medical skill is. There's no, the leadership, the preceptors that you're getting are not inspiring you to want to almost complete your own training in your chosen specialty. Is that what you said?
Right. And it doesn't feel like I would have been a different resident with or without the training. Sometimes it's a lot of, there's a lot of grunt work, scut work that's in the training, and I get that. That's the nature of residency. However, I don't feel my skills improving, and that is very, very important to me. But it shouldn't have the culture. It's just a very frustrating culture, so that I hope to change.
Yeah, and I think you will change that. And I think we have to keep in mind that on these forums that you and I are in, there's a selection bias of the narratives that we're seeing. And I think you recognize that, but just the complete absence of narrative of, I'm a family doctor and I'm thriving. Like the complete absence of that is so scary.
And it doesn't, and I don't count family physicians who do not do primary care. I think that's like saying a surgeon is thriving because they do full clinic and no OR time. It's good for you. It's a great career choice, but your success is the exception to the rule of what everybody else is doing. Like some doctors are like, hey, I love being a doctor. I've also got this side gig or YouTube video, or I just, sell houses, and you're successful, but that has nothing to do with your medical degree per se, or your medical skill set. It means you were a great entrepreneur and you found financial success by, book publishing, but it's not that every MD should go and become a book publisher, like publish books or sell real estate. Or go into crypto or NFTs. It's how do you become a better doctor and thrive?
I love that. Yeah, I'm thriving because I've leveraged my main, like family medicine is my side gig. and I'm doing
Exactly.
well in
And
my other
yeah,
role.
and then you have a doctor in front of your name, and then it makes it easier to sell real estate, in Manitoba. I don't know how that's relevant to me, and that's not like I didn't have, oh, I really need to get into medical school so that, it legitimizes cryptocurrency.
So yeah, I'm getting the sense that you have not really had exposure to any longitudinal family physician who says, I'm thriving and I'm willing to be a mentor. Like you haven't had that exposure in your first 6 months, eh?
No, and the virtues of there are family medicine clinics that thrive, but it's not due to their ability, whether it's that, they've whether one, they're rural, they've, the community, or the city has, subsidized, their practice in any way, and so their overhead is a little bit less, or that they just have a, um they just have, like, they have certain agreements, or they basically found a business arrangement to thrive rather than through their medical ability. So for example, like, and again, this is my cynicism coming out while trying to be more optimistic, is that if you as a physician own a lot of different walking clinics and it somehow works for you, it it has nothing to do, like, I'm not really subscribing to that. I'm saying, how do I provide good care for people? How do I want to come into work every day? And how do I make it financially sustainable through the actions of my medical training and expertise and growth? Not, if I had a trust fund, I could, like, if I came from a trust fund baby background and simply saw patients for free, I would probably be very happy. But I never needed the money in the first place, right? And it wouldn't inspire others because, correctly so, they would say, yes, but it's different for you because this is more of a hobby, right? Like, and again, that's a very narrow example, that I can only make without, like, pointing to any specifics.
Yeah. I really resonated with what you said there, that you want to enjoy coming to work. You want your experience to be good. You want to
Right,
deliver. Yeah, you want to balance the budget and make a good income and thrive financially. And
right.
what I heard even louder potentially is I want to deliver excellent care where the patient outcomes are really good and the patients have a good experience. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ex- exactly. When you think about, say, restaurants, for example, like, you look at restaurants, and they basically go through the same thing. You have to provide an excellent service, and they go into debt all the time, and they really need to, um, make sure that their standards and their consistency is the same, and that everybody is happy, and the stakes are much higher for them because it's not as straightforward for them as it is for us. But, and of course, medicine should be a fast food chain, but that doesn't mean lessons can't be learned from that industry, especially when their backs are more to the wall than we are. I think there's a lot to learn from them, and not just how do I make like 60,000 nuggets and just get people through the door. I'm talking like gourmet restaurants where you have to justify charging thousands of dollars for like a small plate of sushi, and the way they justify it is that this piece took me 20 years to make, and people would pay like $20 a piece, or, and again, I'm being facetious, but, or like thousands of dollars for a kaiseki platter because they respect the skill. Maybe there's a bit of marketing in that, but ultimately it's irreplaceable. It's non-fungible.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. Like you're speaking a lot of sense right now. You're speaking about high quality care where patient outcomes are good and where there's joy at work, where you want to go to work and you're financially successful. And I think these things are really, really possible. I think it's such a tight balance. It's such a tricky balance that not many physicians have found it. So there are some outliers out there, but they
Yeah.
may not be in the same forums that you are and I are on and I are
But I
on.
never, I see them in non-family medicine forums. I see it in the culture of medicine for others. I'm still a resident. I rotate through all the different services at the hospital as outpatient clinics, and these physicians get excited about medicine. They nerd out. They talk about the new journal. They like debate each other in a healthy way. Their community gets excited and in the right domains about how, like, oh, there's this, you know new guidelines have come out, case reports of like new practice standards, and their colleagues support them. Like they will show up to their presentations and show their support and criticize them, but that does not exist in family medicine. I don't see curbside consults in family clinics. I don't see um, family medicine doctors, even in hospital, asking each other for evidence-based advice, or really like the critical thinking that that doesn't that is just so absent in my program. Now, having said that, I do recognize that it's 2021 and I'm part of um, the COVID pandemic program year. However, I do feel a bit robbed that the reputation of UBC family practice programs and education is didn't apply in this year. I will say that I think people think I'm nuts for thinking it's a problem, because I'm essentially asking for the program to be harder, and everyone else is pretty thankful that they're in and that it's 2 years and that they'll just finish and come out and become attendings and end up billing MSP. I just feel very strongly against that, because I feel that cycle, that mentality will, in 10 years, those colleagues would be no different than what I'm seeing now in those forums, and just loud and bitter. And you have to break that cycle.
I couldn't resonate more with what you're saying. Um, you said something about curbside consults, and I think what you mean by that is interprofessional or peer-to-peer collaboration on challenging cases,
Right.
recognizing that we are interdependent and there's no way that one person has all the experience necessary to take care of the clinical cases. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And when you see these forums and they go like, it's so difficult to make ends meet, and they say, and nobody goes into detail, they just say, oh, I empathize with you, same with me, same with me. It's like, well, it doesn't sound like you're actually trying to find a solution. And if you're really not trying to find a solution and you're okay with the essentially the homeostasis of your work situation, then why are you unhappy about it if you've essentially chosen to be in there? But I never see like, oh, they have problems with a difficult patient that they can't get rid of. For example, a very common problem, but no one delves into it. Like they don't do an assessment of like why they're difficult, which can be many reasons. Is it like, but to me, there's so many ways of dealing with a difficult patient, like, which is no different than how you would assess any patient clinically. What is the problem? Is it that they're constantly late? Is that they don't pay their fees? Is it that they're abusive to your staff? Is it that they're medically beyond what you're capable of taking care of? Are they like, or just you don't speak the language and you need an interpreter? Fine, you can cross refer. Like there's a multitude of ways, and I think that it's just met with sometimes very you know immature responses of, you don't understand, you're not there. Well, so is all of medicine, to be fair. And if you're going to react like that, then I like, how is this a healthy conversation?
You know what, I think you are coming from a position of empowerment where you feel empowered and you feel able to respond to challenges with lateral thinking and seeing multiple possible futures from where you're positioned. I think that some of our colleagues, keeping in mind that social media forums and social media posts are a poor representation of the complete reality. They are a snapshot of how a person feels in the moment when they're typing, or they're part of provocative posting, which is disingenuous potentially sometimes. But let's pretend that these posts of complete defeatism with blinders on is sincere. It just like it could be actually a result of being overwhelmed in our coping in a coping mechanism. The poster could actually be having tunnel vision due to limbic responses from the amount of stress and overwhelm that they've found themselves in, such that their ability to think laterally and to see other options has diminished. Um,
Right.
is that a possibility?
Well, that is a possibility, but the brilliant thing is that we are physicians. If this, Sans being a physician were to come to us as a patient and said, "Hey, my work has really made me stressed out. I have, to the point where my limbic system emotionally is overwhelming, and I can't use my higher cortical levels of thinking, and I can't make like complex logical judgments in the near future. What should I do? I'm just tired. I'm anxious, and whatever." What would we say to that patient? What would we say to that patient? We would tell them to sit back and reevaluate them and see, take a break and all of that. But we do not take that advice. Physicians, healthcare professionals are so bad at taking their advice. You know, like urologists die of prostate cancer, psychiatrists commit suicide, internal medicine probably get hyponatremia because they never drink or pee. Like, right? Like there's, and the thing is that kind of, double think is detrimental to us. And, if you need to take a break, irrespective of what anyone says. We're always scared of this kind of unknown, but when patients come to us with those fears, we expertly navigate them, and yet we can't do it for ourselves or one another. And that to me represents something. That to me represents something that we desperately need to fix. Some and what that is, I think, is respect. I think it's respect. I don't think, because it's no different that we see in the pandemic now. Is like when you're a trained physician and I say, "Hey, you really need to get vaccinated," and they say no. That shows more of a lack of respect, more than a lack of understanding. More because we talk about like lack of understanding. Well, I bought an iPhone for like, close to 2 grand after taxes. I don't know if it's tracking me. I don't know if it works. I don't know if they're, throttling the apps. I'm not going to put it in. And even if that's, I just trust, I just respect the technology and I pay for it. And because of that, I realized that that goes for medicine as well. You do not know. Even if you were to go through every medical textbook and pass every exam, you still have the right to question it. And sometimes I feel that it's all about respect. Think about it. Like when you have parents and you say, "Hey, you really need to take your blood pressure pills." They're like, "Oh, you're my kid. I saw you growing up. I think you're silly and you don't know what you're talking about." But the exact same thing said in a different tone by a different person, male or female or older, they'll be like, "Oh, my doctor says I have high blood pressure." And I'm like, "Well, mom, I'm a doctor and I said the same thing." And they're like, "No, it's different coming from them rather than you." It's all about respect. And I think that also fundamentally shows a lack of respect for one another. And it does exist in the community because, family medicine is a business, and, you look towards each other and there's a lot of like envy between family medicine doctors. There's a lot of envy between, how come this clinic can just get by with just a voicemail that says go 911 and I have to provide 24/7 care. So, and then, there's like, well, how can they thrive when they can just do walk-in medicine, whereas I do cradle to grave and even OB practice. So there's a lot of finger pointing and resentment and vitriol that we really need to address. And that comes and that both feeds into and creates a lack of respect, and it only hurts us in the end. And I don't see anything that builds one another up. It's and the nature of family medicine is that you can be by yourself and live a very good life, both professionally and personally. So you can just show up to work, go home. And that's a key thing. You can't do that if you're a pathologist. You can't do that if you're a medical microbiologist. You can't do that if you're I. You have to talk to others. You have to show courtesy both ways. You have to show respect both ways. Otherwise, there's no point in getting consults. But because we can just get away with honestly just becoming a very like just almost just walking clinic, refill meds, refer, order labs, and do that for our entire careers, that we let things slide, and we can just drown out everybody else's voice. And then if people say, well, I don't respect you for being that kind of doctor, they're like, well, I don't respect you either. Whether like it's not a mature response, but that's how I, as a junior doctor, view this current landscape. And I and when they and of course, like, I don't get respect, mainly because the moment I identify myself as a resident, you get a polite smile, and my voice is background noise. And unfortunately, that behavior, and I'm human, creates this sort of, well, I don't see any part of you that I respect, and I don't really see you as a mentor figure or a role model or someone I would vote with for in divisions or college, etc. So that really needs to change.
Everything you're saying resonates with me. You, as a trainee, you need an archetype. You need a mentor who you aspire to at least be somewhat like. And it must be so challenging within this pandemic for your cohort to find people that you would like, yeah, I
Yeah,
want to do that.
yeah. One thing we talked about in the past was about quality improvement and data gathering for family medicine. The metrics that measure the 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 magnitude of a doctor's ability in specialties are not reflected in primary care. So in the sense of, like, like how many papers you publish if you're a rheumatologist, or like how brilliant your fellowships and cutting edge surgeries you can do, or you're the first to pioneer Da Vinci's like surgery machine, like urology in VGH, or you discover new medications, new pathways, new whatever. Those breakthroughs, I can safely say they don't regularly happen in family medicine. And the metrics we use to measure success of a family doctor by other family doctors is simply length of service or their net worth. That really is it. And I just go, that is a horrendous, almost capitalist only mindset of how we elect or choose or view who our leaders are in family medicine. And I go, well, and I'm not saying, hey, we should start publishing papers, hey, we should start being like selfless and not make money to pay off student loans and raise kids and pay off mortgages. I'm saying we really need to redefine what it means to be a good family physician, because I can't just see clinic owners having a loud voice.
I hear from you that when you said the amount of disrespect in our community, the envy, the jealousy of the sense of inequity, or the finger pointing of how come they got that, how come I didn't get that. I see a lot of that as well. There's so much protectionism and jealousy, and it's very unfortunate. And I think what you're asking of the system that you're training in is, where's the collaboration? Where are the curbside consults on how to run a business as a family doctor, how to manage complex cases? These are really basic asks. And
Right.
you had said you had asked for two other things. Oh yes, you had said these metrics. It's how long of service, how long have you suffered in the system?
Pretty much.
And then how much have you billed? Like that's what we're these are the metric if these are the key performance
Right.
indicators of primary care, our system is fucked, right? That's pretty much
Pretty
what it is.
much. Pretty much. I think you have to realize that, if I see like a family medicine bio in magazines and all I see is owner of X clinic, I'm just like, well, excuse me, or non-primary care doctors, or like you have to realize like family doctors are important, but we can't just scream importance, right? Like bike repair technicians are important as well, but it's not like we don't have to make a marketing campaign out of it. I think, you know, skills are very silent. Like the best in the world don't need to advertise themselves, right? Like, say if you think luxury goods where there's only 30 of them, like they don't need to market who they are. Everybody knows who they are. And we need to earn that rather than always demanding respect. Like one of the things that rubbed me the wrong way was this push to get family doctors to be called specialists. And I don't understand why there's so much time and effort wasted on it, as if because it sounds like these people are very ashamed of being a family doctor, and the fact that if you just call them a specialist, their egos will be soothed and they'll be happy. But again, there are crappy specialists. There are, surgeons I don't respect. There are internal medicine doctors I don't respect. There are pathologists that probably, are high up on the table of, that are, I think, should not be practicing. But that, just because you call them a specialist isn't going to change anything. And the people who want to demand respect are the ones who should never get it. If you think of the parallel to police officers are a very vital importance in a democratically run society. But if police officers simply did what they do in the States and simply demand respect, this is the systemic problems. They are police officers. They have all the authority of what they need to do. No regular citizen respects them. And if you're a family physician who simply is called a specialist, but the quality of your medicine does not change, why would anybody view you any differently just because you have different letters after your name? Even if we were like, like you can point and rant and stomp your feet, but how you are treated as a person has nothing to do with your license. And that goes to, and one of the things I keep hearing in these forums is how physicians like, oh, like we don't practice, we can't practice good medicine because we're just drowning in overhead fees and everything. But they're also business people, and I've explained this concept to an innumerable amount of people who are self-proclaimed, oh, I am bad at numbers. I mean, I disagree with that. Everybody had to get good marks in high school, good marks in university in order to be competitive to get into medical school, right? Like it's not hard if you're willing to learn. It's that if you said, okay, I pay 50% in overhead, I'm just making up a number, and I need the government to pay my overhead and good care will follow. Well, that's an association, not causation. And in the government's mind, if we pour in like $50 million and it pays your overhead, and I highly doubt that the quality of care will be different. And so, in a business perspective, if you gave out millions of dollars and you don't get those recordable, documentable data and outcomes back to show, responsibly, to be accountable of where all this money went, they're not going to pay for that. And a lot of physicians, I swear, a lot of business models of physicians will simply get more money, but the quality of care would be the same. They would still refill the same medications. They would still refer the cases that that they don't want to do to other physicians, and they will still take pleasure and passion in the little small areas that they do, but the quality of care overall averaged out will probably not be different. And of course that's a feeling, and that's not based on anything, and people will probably disagree with me. However, if that's the mindset of government, it's up to us to change their mind, because we are asking them to invest millions of dollars, and we can't just rationalize them spending millions of dollars just by saying, but we're just important and you should invest in us and believe in us. That's no different than, when we rave about how, man, we really shouldn't invest millions into like, tax breaks for like big global companies for the same reason. So I think we need to step it up and like have a higher standard.
Edward, you just started in this training in July, I think, and here we are in December, and you are speaking so much sense. I think that those who are listening are going to be convicted. And I think one of your call outs is spend some time in self-reflection. Ask yourself, what are you doing and why are you doing it as a family physician? And if you're not happy, what can you change? What's within your realm of power to change for yourself?
Yeah.
And to be mindful,
yeah.
and to be mindful of how we're influencing people when we use our voice. I think you're asking for that too.
Mhm.
I want to finish off our discussion here, and I want to thank you again for your time after your busy day. I know you were
No worries.
you're just driving home in your car. You've said we need to actually have quality in our service if we are to expect to be wildly successful. I think a lot of our family physicians are looking at other industries, looking at specialist physicians maybe, or looking at administrators, and we're like, they are not working as hard as I am. They don't deserve that money. I deserve that. Like that's kind of the
I mean,
ethos.
working hard is very subjective, and this could be shelved for another discussion. But working hard doesn't necessarily mean working well. Like back when I was a pharmacist, I would start, right at 8, end at 8, 12-hour shift, no breaks, and I would leave on time. But there were some people who stayed for an extra like hour, 2 hours of unpaid time, and they would always look to the owner, oh, he's so hardworking. He puts in an extra hour at the beginning, extra hour at night. And I go, no. I had 100 tasks to do. I did them within, my paid shift. He or she could not do it and, takes an extra 2 hours, right? Working hard should not be proportional to the amount of time you put in per se, right? And it makes me feel as though like I am efficient and I go above and beyond, and my reward is to be criticized that I'm not slower and just drag out my time. Everybody works hard. We all worked hard, but the market determines how we're reimbursed for it, or your own happiness and well-being. And if you're not, and you can't just, because to be fair, those other professionals where quote unquote we criticize that make a lot more money, they work hard, they take meetings all the time, they work weekends and they have to get together, and they fly everywhere, fly to places that they probably don't want to be in, and their counter is that we work way longer hours or we barely get vacation, right? So rather than making it a competition, why is it that your happiness has to be dependent on everybody else doing worse than you? Why is it a comparison, right?
Yes.
So again, like I don't think neurosurgery is happier when they're in the hospital just because they make a lot more than anywhere else. I don't see why that has to be the metric.
What's clear to me is that when there is no joy in your work, you're going to start trying to pull everybody else down with you or demanding more money. I think that is a truth. Now,
Right.
what is quality? If someone wants to be a great family physician, and recognizing you're only 6 months into your practice, but also recognizing that you have amazing perspective, in my opinion, what is great quality family medicine? Can you do your best to define that now that you're 6 months into training as a resident?
I think good medicine is that you can actually be very proud to show it to other specialties and to within to do better. You know, a good IM consult versus a bad one, and you read a good Gen Search consult versus a bad one, you can tell the difference. It's hard for a layman to see, but it's really clear from the medical doctor's point of view. You can tell that they put a lot of critical thinking into, yes, I followed these guidelines, I did this, and they're fine. There is a key distinction between quality those different kinds of doctors. And it does come up when you have them, when you see it from the family medicine side. Those examples are very rare and far in between. And if I can be a little bit, you know, proud of my own skills, is that I do write a lot of good consults. And it's a smattering of, you know, tips and tricks from all the other specialties, because family medicine requires that. But family medicine specialty is to synthesize all the other specialties in a way that nobody else thinks about. We can't just go, oh, this is not our problem, it's this, or whatnot. Actually, maybe for some surgical issues, but like, you need to see them. I need to show them to you for it to be inspiring. And then, you know, you would get respect from other branches of medical specialties to say, hey, that was a really good catch by the family doctor that we never thought about, because we never thought to see this from a surgical perspective or from a pathology perspective. Family med always gets this bad rap of, you're just an overpaid administrative assistant. Well, I disagree. There's a lot you can do, but it's because specialties are limited by their specialties. They can't see the bigger picture. They can't see the bigger picture beyond what their narrow training is per se. But, you know, it's something that unless, for me, that I actually sought out, it's very hard to see for family doctors. And, you know, I can talk about examples, but we're kind of coming near the end of this, and I guess we'll save it for the next interview with you.
Yeah, I look forward to exploring more about quality, but what I hear from you is excellence in the synthesis of knowledge, of general medicine knowledge, knowing bits about every part of the body, of our body systems, and then being an excellent communicator about it as we
Exactly.
communicate to our
Yeah.
team members, and
We need to-
recognizing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we need to brag about our family medicine victories, not always the social ones that sometimes is very overblown. It's like the difference between psychiatry, where it's like there's a lot of like psychiatry sometimes is unfairly criticized as, you know, being very soft and very, social dependent, but it's biopsychosocial, and there's a lot of evidence behind all the methods that they use. And when you see good psych consult liaison, consults, you go, wow, I learned something from this consult. I learned something that made my medicine better. And that can be possible in family too, where even other specialties reading about it go, wow, I'm going to use this in my practice. I think that was a good evidence-based medical fact that I can use that a family medicine caught. I've done that in my specialty rotations as an R1. I do not understand why it cannot be done by family medicine attendings.
I love that. I think your call to action is for us as family physicians who are attendings to lean into mentorship, to lean into continuous learning and continuous self-improvement and self-development, so that we actually create and lead cultures that are more safe for trainees like yourself and more safe for our patients. I hear you, and I want to thank you, Edward, for joining us on the call today. Have a great rest, and I'm going to see you back on the forums.
Anytime. Thank you, Dr. Yang.
Have a good night. Bye.
Take care. Bye.